Hello, everyone. This is Molly from the Casually Molly podcast, and I just wanted to introduce you to my friends at the Natty Cat. This one is for you cool cats and kittens who can't get enough of wordplay and fur babies. The Natty Cat's natural soy candles feature inventive scent combinations in glass jars with clever kitties on the labels. Hand-purred with locally sourced natural soy wax, the Natty Cat's candles wood wicks create a cozy fireside crackling sound, perfect for curling up on the couch. Remember, for all of your candle and scented oil needs, please visit our friends at the Natty Cat either on Facebook or Instagram.
Have you ever wanted to get your shit together? Scrap it, look through the lens and capture it. But first world problems are getting you down. Disabled, salty, needing a laugh to fix that frown. Well, you can do all those things and so much more. Just grab a seat in the chair or the floor. Sit back, relax, recline. Well, she drops another casual line. You're tuned into Casually Molly with Molly and Bergie.
Okay, welcome back to the Casually Molly podcast. I am your host, Molly Ambergy. Just remember that we have a new episode every Sunday on audio and video, so just remember to casually subscribe. But enough about that for right now. We are sitting here with St. Louis-based comedian Will O'Donnell. It's like we didn't talk before earlier, but
hello, Molly.
Showbiz. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I was so excited that you agreed to come on. I know I say this a lot to people, but I really do admire you as a comedian. So,
thank you.
Oh my gosh, you're very welcome. I've been excited getting to know you. I know that I remember like kind of seeing you more at the Funny Bone and Backdoor and whatnot. But one of my favorite stories about Will O'Donnell was we were talking about the helium competition just earlier. And a couple of years ago, Will and I, during comedy competition season, for those of you who aren't aware, before COVID happened, there used to be a bunch, but we were at Helium together and you and I were in the first round. And an embarrassing story about me was I went to go do my set and I fell on stage.
I remember that.
Yes.
I remember that now. I forgot all about it until you just said this.
Oh,
yeah.
So did everybody else. But, here we are. But why I bring this up was I was like, oh my gosh. So I got up and I recovered because I got up and I remember saying like, I'm a theater major, shit happens. And everybody like busted out laughing. We like went along and it was fine. But I remember I came out afterwards and I think you were sitting with a mutual friend of ours, Andy Hamilton. And Will was so nice. He goes, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to you. I have so much respect for you right now for getting up. And I was like, oh, well, I'm so embarrassed. And he's like, yeah, I don't know how you did that. And I just remember I was like, wow, that was really nice of Will to say.
You fell down and then the room got totally quiet. And you walk up to the microphone, and I was sitting in the back of the room going, address it, address it, address it, address it, address it. Like, the only thing you could have done wrong was to just walk up to the microphone and start doing your joke. Mm-hmm. You would have just bombed the whole time.
Right.
But you had a line. You're like, I'm a theater major. It's okay. Rah, everybody laughed. And then you just moved on.
And that's the story of my life. So it's all right.
You handled it well.
Oh, well, thank you. I remember your set too, because Will, you're known for making jokes about Quick Trip. So
I am, for better or for worse. I am sort of known for that. Yeah.
I was about to say, do you get approached now? Do you get recognized at the Quick Trip? Do they know about your stand-up routine?
No, but at least once a week, someone mentions me in Quick Trip, and they send me stuff from Quick Trip. I mean, I'll take it. I would like some money from Quick Trip at some point. But.
Well, yeah. If you guys are from Quick Trip that are watching, please sponsor Will at some point. Make him your spokesperson. He's making now. It's just like I said, you're affiliated with it. So anytime I get gas,
I gotta get that joke on tape.
Yes.
With no F-bombs, no curse words, and just send it to him and say, hey. I'll do your corporate party or whatever. Give me some money or something. I don't know.
That's what happens, though. I did an interview with Ray Hartman over at the Big 550, and I love Ray. Ray, if you're listening, you're wonderful. But it was so funny because when you start doing radio and all that, they're like, we just need you to have a clean set. And I'm not that I'm like necessarily, and like, I'm not really like a dirty comedian per se, but I do drop the F-bomb a bunch. So,
Sure.
it's just like, you're like, oh my gosh, I think about all the times I was like told to be clean. And then I go into my tapes and I'm like, oh, this is so clean. And then, you know.
Listen to it, and it's, one or two F-bombs in there. I do it all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I did a show where I had to be completely clean. And so I had a couple recordings of everything was minus all the curse words and all the sexual references. And I'm the same way. I'm like 95% clean, but
Yeah.
I'll talk about anything and I will curse whenever I want. To me, it's not, no, I don't think anyone thinks of me as being a dirty comic or like pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
But there's clean and then there's like radio clean. you know?
Exactly.
It's like, so.
It sounds good to me. Well, when you send in that clip, let me know.
Thanks.
But it's kind of nice too, Will. You're the first in-person interview I've had in a while. So like, I'm so happy to have human contact and look at a person in person.
I appreciate it. I think you're the first human I've spoken to today besides my wife. So.
Oh, well, thanks. I appreciate it. What a nice caliber. Will's wife and then me. And there was Chris back there,
That's
but
true.
he's hidden.
I completely forgot about Chris. Just talked to him 45 seconds ago, and he's completely out of mind.
Oh,
He's
Chris,
very-
how do you feel about that?
Wait, you guys don't have headphones on, so
So
you
it's
can't
okay.
hear. So my opinion isn't important whatsoever. But for those of you listening at home, thank you for supporting me.
So yes, Chris says thank you for supporting for those of you who didn't hear him. But what I will talk to you about, Will, we always bring everybody on kind of like a casual background of yourself. So you are from a small town in Missouri.
That's correct. I'm from a
Okay.
town called Louisiana, Missouri.
Oh, I actually know about that.
Yeah,
So,
you've been up
cool.
that way with Jimmy and stuff. He's from
Foley.
which is right down the road.
Yep.
There aren't too many people from a smaller town than Jimmy.
Yeah.
But Jimmy's one of them.
Yes.
So Foley is really small. But
Yes.
Yeah, 3,000 people, Louisiana. I grew up there with 5 brothers, and now I'm as far as the St. Louis region. At least I got out of Pike County. So
I was about to say, so what? Yes, and to give a background, when Will is talking about Foley, Missouri, he's not joking. Like, Foley is super small. When Jimmy and I went on our first date, I was like, oh, like, I've been to small towns before. Like, what is it? Like 3,000 people? And he goes, try 160. And I was like, oh,
right,
okay. But
one stop sign
yeah, one stop sign.
by the abandoned bar, and then like turn right across the railroad tracks to some like little houses that flood every other year, and that's the whole town.
That was like, so that the abandoned bar thing, we drove by what
Bonus
they
Party
called
Cove.
Foley Bar.
And Foley Bar, yeah.
I was like, we should go there. And Jimmy's like, well, it's not open anymore, but the sign still says we're open. So I don't
Nice.
know. Maybe something's going to happen.
Painting a permanent open sign seems ill-advised.
Yes. No big deal. But I guess the big question is, do you guys have a Dollar General?
We do. We have a new Dollar General, as a matter of fact. Our Walmart dried up and blew away. It moved to Bowling Green.
Oh,
Our town is so small that it couldn't support a Walmart
oh man.
or McDonald's. McDonald's dried up and blew away.
Even McDonald's left?
We got. Oh, and Pizza Hut too. So Pizza Hut. So we'll see. Let COVID run its course, and there may be no businesses left in the whole town.
Oh
Just
my
the
gosh.
state prison outside town, employing everyone, and everyone's going to work for the state prison or the state school. That's
Oh,
the only
man.
jobs available.
Welcome to the small town life.
Yeah. That's America, though, in a couple of years.
Yeah.
There's going to be one company, it's Amazon. It's the only company in the entire universe. And then the government. You can work for the government or Amazon, and that's it. All
Isn't
live
it
performances
crazy?
are permanently canceled.
Yeah, speaking of live performances, you're still kind of like keeping them up a little bit,
Yeah.
though, with your Parrot show. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I couldn't stand the lockdown, and so the minute it lifted, I just started a show. Like this bar, the bar's opened on Monday, and by Wednesday I had a show going.
Yeah.
And it's the first show I've ever really produced. Because like
Oh.
I just focus on performing. I just want to perform. I don't want to mess with shows.
Yeah.
But the only way to get on stage was to make a show. So I started this show at Parrots, and it's been going strong for like 10 or 12 weeks now. We're going to pause it for a couple of weeks because coronavirus cases seem to be surging in St.
Yeah.
Charles County right now. So pump the brakes for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then hopefully the wave will pass.
Yes.
And then we'll do it again.
Yeah.
That's the way, I don't know. That's my attitude on it. It's like the threat's never going to be 0. Mm-hmm. But like it's temporarily spiking, so it's like, all right, this is an easy choice to just shut it down for a couple weeks. Once it gets back down to an acceptable level of risk.
I agree. No, it's definitely a crazy time. I feel like everything's kind of been seeing in 2020 now. Like everybody's got all these different focuses, all these different opinions. You see it on Facebook. So at least what I like what you're doing is you are trying to bring some kind of like laughter and things to the situation. And has the audience been receptive to it?
Yeah, it's been real cool. Like that bar, it has a real stage with lighting, and that makes a big difference. If you're going to start a show at a bar, start one in a bar that already has a PA and a stage and lighting. Like, what, you know?
Totally.
Then you can just walk in and do the show. And they're pretty good about watching comedy. They'll be quiet. They'll pay attention. They'll laugh. It's a pretty good room for comedy. So
that's good. No, I actually love bar shows because I feel like some people, like I used to produce a few things in theater where I did a comedy show at a wine bar and I produced that. But I get what you're saying when you're like, have the PA there and have the mic there already.
Right.
Yeah, because like the wine bar was wonderful and I loved them to death. But I luckily had like my PA system from other things I used. And the difference is though I had a wireless mic, but I had to tell all the people I had assigned to the show. I was like, listen, you can only move a certain amount. You can't do. So it kind of, it can work. And like people who are probably watching who do produce shows probably like, oh yeah, I've made it work before. But it doesn't, I've also produced shows where you do have everything ready to go. So I understand the convenience of it.
And do all comics, or at least most comics, hate wireless mics?
So me personally, I do just because, so I bought one, and again, I was like in my early 20s when I did this show, but I bought them at Micro Center just because they were cheap. It was like $20 for the box. I was like, oh, you can't beat that, you know?
Yeah, you can definitely
but
beat
you
that.
can beat it. So then I went to Micro Center, brought my receipt, and then I bought a regular one after that. So
yeah, I don't know. They just seem to be like, they always seem to cause problems, the wireless mics. They're always a problem. And then for some reason, they all have the power button on the damn microphone.
Yes.
So like just holding the microphone turns it off.
Yeah.
You'd think someone by now would have been like, hey, let's put the button somewhere besides where you put your fingers. You know, just put it on the bottom or put it out of the way, put a little, no.
Mine was like one of those click and presses kind of thing. And so if you're like getting into the moment without even realizing it, you could click it off. And then the problem is with them too, in case anybody is interested in technology, this is what you need to listen to. What I'll say is that you have to charge them too, or like the batteries.
Oh, yeah.
So that was another problem was I was like, all right, I have to like charge my batteries for a certain point. And again, that's like how old these were. And then, I don't know. I just couldn't like focus as well as I did. So
It's
I mean,
not worth it.
you know,
just deal with the cord.
yeah, just do it with the cord. Like, granted, the show
I kind
went
of like
well.
dealing with the cord, you know?
Exactly.
It gives you
Just
something to do with your hands, and you got to get tangled up in it.
make it a part of your bit. You
Yeah.
know, who knows? But speaking of getting you, you know, you're doing all these shows. How did we move from small town Missouri into St. Louis? What brought you here?
Well, first I went away for 8 years. I joined the military, which is a good way to get out of small town Missouri. Is
Yeah.
just join the military. So I did that for 8 years, and then I wanted to come home, but I ended up getting a job in the St. Louis area, and so I moved to St. Charles, and here it is. 10 plus years later, I've been in St. Charles, and it's pretty cool.
There you go. I like it. I guess like the other big question that, you know, everybody asks on every podcast, why comedy? What brought you to comedy? Why are you a comedian now?
Yeah, it was just sort of by accident, I guess. I started late. I was 35 the first time I did an open mic, which is really late to get started. But I wanted to write. I wanted to be a writer, and I've kind of always written stuff a little bit, but never could get any traction. You know, I just never could do it methodically. You know, a real writer writes all the time. A writer writes. You know, and so I had creative, you know, ability and creative passion, but I couldn't find an outlet for it. And then I went and saw a comedy show. I went and saw Duncan Trussell, and it was incredible. Like, I saw him at the Firebird, and it was amazing. And I was like, God, live comedy is the best. Like, why don't I do this all the time? Like, I just felt such a strong attraction to it. I was like, I'm going to go see comedy tonight. What's available? Open mic at the Funny Bone. That's the only comedy in town tonight. So I went just to watch. And I think that was when the thought first dawned on me, like, I could try this. I could get up there. And
Yeah.
Like, and that's what I suggest to people who talk about trying their first open mic is go watch one or two first. You'll feel a lot better.
That's what I did.
There's always going to be a handful of people who are so terrible that you'll think, well, at least I could do that well. You know, like it's not the end of the world if you go up at an open mic and you fail.
Yeah.
And so once you realize that like a third or half the people at an open mic do fail, it's like, oh, the pressure is off. Nobody cares about me. So went up. I did my first open mic at Helium at their bucket mic, and I got laughs, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
Just absolutely hooked, and I've just been running nonstop ever since. So
What's
about 4
been
years ago.
what's been your favorite experience regarding comedy? Like, was it producing a show? Was it being in a show? Did you work with somebody that you really liked, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's been before the shutdown. I was just starting to do feature length sets. You know, like getting to feature for the first time at Funny Bone was a huge honor.
Yeah.
But like I featured for Leanne Morgan down at
I
Cape.
love her.
She's
Yeah.
great. I featured for her for 4 shows down at Cape, and that was actually the show where I had to be 100% clean.
Yes.
And it was just, I mean, there's just nothing better than like a whole like room full of people having a great time. Being up there for that amount of time, you know, 20, 25 minutes, doing well the whole time. And then just coming to the realization is like, well, I can, like, if I can do this for 25 minutes comfortably, I can do it for an hour. It's just a matter of writing the material.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, I just don't have, I do 25, 30 minutes and I'm out of stuff to say, and I can't improv another 30 minutes. So it's just a matter of building up that material. But like, I came to that realization this year. It's like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm completely comfortable whether I'm up there for 5 minutes or 20 or 30. I'm totally comfortable the whole time. It's just a matter of having more material.
Yeah.
You know, a headliner just has an hour and a half of material. So if you ask them to do an hour, no problem. So
I like that. No, I think that's a great approach to it too. Like I feel, I mean, we've talked about this a bunch because we have a lot of comedians on here, but I feel like when you first start out, there are some people who think they have to have an hour's worth of material right away. So when
Yeah.
you give like a 5-minute set to them or like 3 minutes, they're like, wait, what? Like, and I always kind of, not that I've been, you know, an experienced person so far, but what I always say to people is that like less is more. So when you start kind of like working on stuff,
right.
focus on that
A really
little bit.
good 4 minutes is better than a crappy 10.
Exactly.
Just-
Exactly.
Get a really good 4 together, and then you can do guest spots on shows, and then work on getting that good 10, and then you can be a host. You know, you could host a show of 7 minutes.
Yeah.
As long as whoever's putting the show together is okay with that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
a really good 7 minutes is enjoyable. A crummy 10 minutes is excruciating.
Oh
you know?
yeah. No, I just feel like, especially if like you feel like you ended on something good,
Yep.
you should just end it. Like,
That's
you know,
true.
like I don't know. When I was hosting for Erica Rhodes at Helium, I had 10 minutes, and Ryan at the time was like, yeah, you can do like 8 to 10. And I was like, oh, I'll be fine. Like, it's no big deal. But then I was like 8:39 and I could like feel it. And I was like, all right. And you have that moment, right? Where you're like, well, should I keep going? Should I not? And I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to stop because this ended
Yeah.
strong and this isn't about me because I'm the host. So like
Right.
I
You
was just
remind
like, you know
yourself.
what? Yeah, exactly. And it was, you know, it was a good, I was telling Jimmy, I was like, I felt like it was a good decision. I felt strong when I did it. So I don't know. I agree with you. I feel like just kind of when you end it on a good note, even if it's less, it's good to go. So
Right.
what I'll ask you too is what kind of differences have you felt between like producing a show versus performance? Have you felt, I guess like sometimes, you know, as comedians, you do kind of talk about like, you know, sometimes comedians are like, all right, I'm doing a show, I'm doing all of this. What if I started producing something?
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess, I mean, I haven't produced a show up until now just because I just, my focus is all on being a performer.
Sure.
I just want to perform.
Yeah.
I started doing this parrot show, and it's been fun. It's amazing to me how little work it is.
Yeah.
It's just nothing. I mean, all I do is book people. Most of them ask me, you know, and I say, okay, you can do this date and you do this so much time. And I send out a group email, and then we show up. They have the mic, they have the PA, they have the lights, they have the audience. We perform, and then we go home. The part I don't like about it is all I'm thinking about is the show. And then at the last minute, I'm like, oh crap, I got to go up there and do jokes. I don't even know what I'm going to do. Whereas normally I like to just, it's all about me and my jokes and my 5 minutes or my 20 minutes or whatever I'm doing. I like having that focus as a performer and letting Molly or whoever else run the show.
Yeah.
I like that. So I don't have a lot of aspirations to like get into doing shows. Although in this current climate or the future climate, whatever it may be, if you want to get on stage, you might have to do your own show because there's just none available otherwise.
Yeah.
So maybe I will get more into. I've start thinking like, where can I do an outdoor show? You know, where can I do? Where is there a Parrots that has a patio that we could do an outdoor type thing? But then it's like TikTok, cold weather's coming.
Yeah, that's
And
the other
then
thing.
Cold and flu season with it.
Of course.
Doom and gloom, but I don't know.
That's all right. I mean, I was about to say, like, how do you kind of feel about comedy during, I mean, we talked about this a lot too on other episodes as well, but what's kind of your opinion on comedy in the pandemic? And like, I mean, I know that's kind of a vague question, but where do you see it? And I guess in your opinion, where do you see it going from here?
At first, I was really optimistic, and maybe it's just wishful thinking. I just thought this is going to pass quickly. It's not going to be as bad as anyone says. Like almost everything, it's hyped, hyper negative, and it's never going to be that bad.
Yeah.
But now it's looking like, oh boy, we could have another shutdown, or it could just keep going. It could go months and months and months. And it's like, how long can these comedy clubs hold on without making revenue? I feel like a lot of them are going to start shutting down soon. So it's looking dire. It can't last forever, and eventually it'll come back. So it might be, I don't know.
Yeah.
It might be like, this might be like an event that kills off tons of live comedy, and then it comes back gradually. It's going to change it for sure. More people are doing more things online. I do know that like live comedy, like what we call stand-up comedy, doesn't really work online. For some reason, it just doesn't. Without that live audience there giving the laughs, it just feels weird.
I agree, and I have mixed.
It's not much fun to watch
it's
either.
Just like exactly. Like I have mixed. Like we were in some. I tried some of those virtual open mics in the beginning, and I feel like this is kind of like a medium thing. Like for this, we've got the screen, we've got our mics, we've got going back and forth.
Yeah. Interacting with each other. It's a lot better than like me in my basement and you in your basement.
Yeah.
There's that disconnect there, like the human. That live thing is the thing.
Yeah.
That's what makes live comedy cool, is that it's live.
Exactly.
Like even my favorite comics, when I watch their special on Netflix, I don't laugh near as hard as I do in person.
Yes.
I can almost not laugh at all for some reason. It's just not, something about it isn't as good.
Yeah.
Or even as funny.
Oh, trust me. I was a theater major. So anything like that, and that's something that we go through too in the theater community is like, so obviously you can go to the movies now, and like, obviously because of COVID, you can stream Hamilton on Disney Plus, which I'm not saying, not everybody can go to Hamilton. So that's also a whole other conversation. But people all the time are like, what's going to happen with live theater? Like, where is it going to lead from there?
Right.
And the same thing comes up with comedy, because when we have comedians on, it's been interesting to have these conversations, because normally I would be sitting here and be like, Will, tell us about like a show you got. Oh, you're at the Funny Bone, you're hosting for so-and-so, or you're with Leanne Morgan. But then it's like, well, how do we kind of transfer as a podcast interviewer and then an interviewee talking about being a comedian in this time? And like, you just have to be kind of honest. Like, there are some dire thoughts that are happening, but we do have, like you're producing an independent show, Backdoor Comedy Events, which is a local club here in O'Fallon, Missouri.
Yep.
I will be featuring at the end of the month. Shameless plug for me. But why I say that is that, we do have like, people who are trying to keep certain things open, and then Helium just opened back up. And I was super impressed with their layout about social distancing, because everybody was super far apart, which was
have
great.
A pretty good plan there.
Yeah. I mean, so I really wanted to see Tony Roberts, and, Tommy was hosting, and Tina, who are other local comedians here, was featuring. And I was a little hesitant at first, just because it's a weird time to be like, because you've been locked up for so long, so you're like,
the first couple trips out are really weird, and it's weird to me that there's still people who are still at home. I've been out for months.
Yeah.
Shit.
But yeah, Helium was great. So shout out to them. They did a great job at social distancing.
It's kind of weird. You'll be out somewhere at a show or something, and like someone will come in. They're like looking around. They're like, "You just got out, huh? This is your first time out." It's like, relax. You know what I mean? Relax, man. But yeah, people 3-4 months of being home alone, and they're just freaked out about. I don't know. I feel like it could be a long time before people are eager to like cram into comedy club.
Oh, totally.
It may be a really long time. So like, I don't know. Things could be different for a while.
Yeah, I
mean,
agree.
It might be 10 years before people like are just completely forgot about any sort of virus. If there's not just another one after this, you know?
Yeah, I know, right? Well, that's what kind of scares me is, well, because I was kind of like you, where at first I was like, oh, like we're going to get through this. We're going to be fine. Like I was telling one of my friends the other day, I was like, oh yeah, I was like, oh, I was motivated. I was doing live streams. I was like, this is just going to be, and then there came a point where it just kind of sits in and you're like, oh, this could be a minute.
Right. This isn't going to be 2 months.
Yeah,
3 months.
exactly.
This is going to be, it's going to be, who knows? And out the other side, everything we know is going to be different.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. So who knows? But have you been, when you were in quarantine, did you feel like you got a lot of writing done, or did you pick something new, or were you just kind of coasting?
Yeah. I try and write, but I realized that like, you would think, okay, you're home more with nothing to do, you can get a lot of writing done. I guess I realized how much doing open mics is part of the writing process.
Yeah, right.
Like I got to come up with an idea, and then like I'm like, oh, that's a funny idea, and then I'll think of a line. I'm like, oh, I got it. Okay, that's a joke. I can do that tonight on stage.
Yeah.
And I'll go do it that night, and it'll get a laugh. And then I'm like excited about it. I got a thing. And then like the next day I'll be vacuuming the floor, and oh, a new line will come to me. Oh no. And then next thing you know, oh, I'll try that one tonight. But like going up and trying it is such a part of the process. It's like writing comedy is different than writing nonfiction or fiction or whatever. I think it's a little bit different. I think the audience's reaction is a big part of even the writing process, at least for me. So I got to figure out I mean, I can't use it as an excuse. I got to figure out how to write without the live feedback.
Oh, no. And I feel like that's something that as comedians, we're all going through.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like, I mean, I did this anyway before we had, before everything shut down. But I've definitely been talking to the walls more. Like, and it's hard, though, because you'll be talking to the walls, and then your transition was, all right, the walls can't respond, but the people can, right?
Yeah.
So now it's just like, all right, so where do we go from here? And like you can run things by people, which is great too. You can talk to like somebody else. Like sometimes I'll run some stuff by Jimmy and be like, what do you think of this? But at the end of the day, I totally get what you're saying. That open mic process is so valuable. So I think that's the
There's
question.
a lot of times that I write lines on stage.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Like a lot of my best lines I thought of in the moment on stage.
Exactly.
That's probably the best thing that happens in comedy. You asked me earlier, what's my favorite thing?
Yeah.
It's when I think of a new line on stage and it like kills.
Yeah.
Because somehow the audience knows that you just thought of that, or they don't know that you just thought of that, but it's funnier to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you improv something, it's funnier than when you've said something, rehearsed it, and then said it as if you just thought of it, right? Which is all stand-up comedy is basically.
Yes.
When you actually think of something funny in the moment and say it, and they just laugh so hard, and it's like, oh shit,
Yes.
I got a new part for that now. Awesome, you know?
I agree.
Or more often than that, it's like, I'm gonna stop saying that part. You know what I mean? I've said that part 28 times now. It never gets a laugh. It's time to let it go.
Yes.
That happens way more.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And that's like, well, that's also too, we'll talk about kind of like the art of bombing. Like, I always feel not that, well, you know what, I'll just say this. Sometimes you bomb and you do learn something, right? Was there ever an experience where that happened to you and you felt like that was a turning point? Because sometimes that happens to me where I'm like, oh, this is definitely a catalyst or something that could make something better, I guess.
So before I did my show at Parrots, Andy Hamilton did an open mic there.
Yes, he did.
And it was great. I got up every Wednesday for my first year at Parrots.
Gotcha.
It was like my home club, Parrots is where I started comedy. And so I remember going up one night and I start doing a thing and they like me and they're laughing, and then I start doing a thing and it just bombs. I'm like in the middle of this thing and it's just bombing harder and harder and harder. And it was like the first time really that I've bombed, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, this sucks. I don't like the way this feels. And then I just like addressed it and started ad-libbing.
Yeah.
And they started cracking up. And I was like, oh, like I was like, I can always do that. Like I can always just think of some shit in the moment to say, now I was wrong. I can't always think of shit in the moment.
Right.
But usually I can think of something in the moment. And
Sure.
I don't know. It was like a huge confidence booster to me. Like, oh, bombing's not that bad. Like I got him back. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I feel like exactly like it's going to happen, you know? And so you just either have to embrace it. And like, we talked about this with Max Price when he was on, another local comedian here. You know, you just kind of have to embrace it and turn it into something. You know, you could run in the other direction, but why not make it something different? What I'll ask you too is we did talk about kind of like club shows and bar shows. Personally, I like both just because I want I feel like I'm definitely one of those people that just wants to experience it all.
Yeah.
I definitely though have had people approach me and they're like, oh, like, I don't know if I would like fit in at a comedy club, which I think is a really weird thing to say.
Like as an audience member?
Yeah. It's like, it's so I did a show at a bar once and
they turn the lights off.
Like, but you're not seen. So I don't understand.
You have a minimum of 2 drinks. You put on a wicked buzz. They turn the lights off.
Yeah.
It's fine.
See, that's what I'm saying. Wow. I definitely got my hair soaked today, but that's fine. Anyway, I got stuck in the rain before this, so it's all right. But that's what I was saying to him was I was like, oh my God, it's the same thing when people are like, oh, I don't know if I could go see live theater because like maybe there's a certain class system or something to it. I'm like, come to a comedy club. Everybody goes. Like, it's so fun. It's just like what Will talked about. And then on the other hand, sometimes I'll have people who are interested in doing comedy. Not everybody, but it was an interesting interaction to have with somebody was they were like, again, interested in doing comedy and they see Comedy Central, right? And you see all the lights and the cameras and Jim Gaffigan has been doing this for years. Exactly. So they're like, oh, so when they're asked to do a show at a bar, they're like, what? This isn't going to be like Comedy Central. I'm very confused. I would just kind of see
you're going to do comedy 5 times and the 5th time you're going to get a special on Comedy Central.
Exactly.
You're going to do an hour. You're going to play the Stiefel Theater when you come. I mean, some people are just nuts.
Yeah. Oh,
you know
totally. I mean? Exactly. I was going to say, do you feel like there's a difference in between how they're run or just like the aesthetic of it? How do you feel about a club show versus a bar show?
I love performing in clubs. It's the best because everyone is facing the stage and they came there to see comedy.
Totally.
And so it's just awesome. Like you just walk up, you say your joke and they laugh because they came to laugh.
Yeah.
Bar shows, there's a whole spectrum of what bar shows can be like. I feel like my Parrot show is on the good end of the spectrum. For the most part, they'll be quiet, they'll pay attention, and they'll laugh. Sometimes at a bar show, you just you feel like you're just talking to a bar full of people who aren't paying attention. And that's the worst. Like, not paying attention is the worst. Like being hostile or bombing, that's fine. But like not paying attention is worse. So, and then there's everything in between. But I like bar shows because they make me better.
Yes.
You have to work. You have to work to get their attention. You have to work to hold their attention. You have to say better jokes. You know what I mean? Like I'm just hearing all this fat in my jokes. I'm like, I got to trim all this out because this is too many words without punchlines. Like bars need punchline, punchline, punchline. You got to be quick. You got to like, and so then I go do a club show and it's like, this is easy. Because I built all that muscle up at the bar show.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I feel like, exactly, I was going to say, it feels like it tones you out, basically.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like you definitely appreciate the growth that you have coming from bar shows. So that's just my personal opinion, but I completely agree with you.
People just chatting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's the hardest thing is people talking.
But the best is when you get them to turn around.
You get them to turn around and pay attention. That's what I said. Like, if you can get them to pay attention, oh, man, it's going to be easy. When people show up to see you.
Exactly. Yeah. I totally agree. What I'll ask you too is there anybody, I guess, like comedy wise that you admire or somebody who you consider maybe a mentor? It could be somebody you've watched live or just somebody in our community. Shout out.
There's so many. And like, it's a weird thing. Like, there's no one who I see and I'm like, there's everyone that I see. And I think like, I want to emulate that. Like, I want to do comedy like that.
Yeah.
And then the next night I see someone of completely different style and I'm like, nope, I'm going to emulate that. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so like hanging around the Funny Bone, I got to see Greg Warren a lot, you know, and like he's like, to me, he's like top notch, you know.
He's fantastic.
And and every time I'd see him, I'm like, I want to do comedy like that, you know. And it's like, no, that's not what I sound like. That's not who I am. Then I would see someone who's completely the opposite of Greg, like a John Morgan is another guy who came through that I'm just like, wow, I'm blown away. Totally different style, and I'm like, that's what I want to emulate. And it's like, no, I'm not John Morgan. So I don't know. I just feel like you just soak up as many of those as you can and try and let whoever you is come out.
Sure.
And try and sound like you. But you know, I've got to work with some really great comics like Joe Mackey. I got to feature for Joe Mackey. He's a guy who I think is one of the funniest guys alive. And there's no way I could like use his style. You know what I mean? Like his style is so far away from what I do. There's no way.
Yeah.
And yet I watch him and I'm like, I just want to be that.
Yeah.
I just want to be Joe
exactly.
Mackey. Like, God, why can't I just think of jokes that brilliant? You know, just snap them off. Just stands up there, just one joke after another. You know, doesn't have to move. Just talks into the microphone, and the words are so funny that I just lose my shit in the back of the room.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
And then I see other comics like I said, John Morgan. He's the opposite. He's very theatrical, demonstrative. He moves. He uses the whole stage. He does act outs. He does voices. And I think, no, that's what I want to do.
Yes.
That's what I want to do. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Still
that's
figuring it out.
relatable. Right.
I
That's
guess
what I was gonna say.
You just always are still figuring it out.
That was my next question was, you know, we talk about like as comics, like finding your voice and finding your truth. Do you kind of, I mean, I guess you answered my question. It was like, you're still trying to figure out, but do you have like a certain, it's just going to sound so cliche, but like, do you have a certain process or something when you go to write something? Cause I can kind of relate to you in the fact where you're like, oh, I'm going to vacuum. And then all of a sudden something comes to mind. I'm going to try that now. But
yeah,
how do you, I guess, you know, we'll narrow this question down a little bit better. If you has there been kind of a growth and change you feel like in your voice from day one to comedy until now?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think so.
You're like,
well-
I hope so.
Well, and I still am doing stuff that's like, I wrote it a couple, 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm like, I can't wait to rotate that out of the set.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like me anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
like, I would love to get to a point where I write a new hour and it's all the same voice. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it's all sort of tied together. It's all one thing. It's like this, I go up and I do 20, 25 minutes now. And it's like, I make it flow pretty well, I think. But it's like, if I could go through that, I could go through and point, I'd be like, well, I wrote that bit when I was in a really bad mood.
Sure.
And like, you know, like it was before I got married to my wife and we were broken up and I was in a dark place and I wrote that joke and that's why it's so mean. And then the next joke I do is when I'd been married, you know, and everything in my life was awesome. And it's like, you could be in the audience member like, well, who's this guy talking? Well, it's like, it's not one guy, it's like 10 guys. You know what I mean? It's 10 different Will O'Donnells wrote this set and you're going to see 10 of them and they're all fictional and they're all real. I don't know.
Yeah, that is the best way I've heard that phrase because it's just like looking, not that I have a bunch of these anymore, but it's just like when you look through a diary and you're like, oh my God, that was a phase that,
Yeah.
you know, me being Molly, I definitely kept a few of those. But why I bring this up is just like, I think of like the diary reference, like the notebooks that you keep, because I look back at some of my old material and I go, ooh, I thought this was funny. No, like I don't, like especially I found a recording of when I did comedy for the very first time and I cringe just listening to it. Like I'm like, oh, like I'm sure there's somewhere on YouTube where it's there. Please don't look it up. But if you do, like, you'll know how I felt. But that's why I was wondering, because I feel like because in the moment, right, you feel like this is so good. And then you look back on it later on, you're like, oh, but I feel like that
That's
means
a
that you
weird
grew.
thing. Yeah, that's a weird thing about comedy is like in the moment or at the time you think this is funny and you go up and you do it and it works. Like the audience thinks it's funny too, or at least a little bit. And then you look back on it later and you're like, oh, that was terrible. I'm so embarrassed. Why did I say that? But it's like you couldn't know then or you wouldn't go up and do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was the
Exactly.
best joke you had at the time and you had to just go up and rock it with tons of confidence.
Yeah.
If you would have known how bad it was, you'd have been like, I'm not going up there and saying that shit.
Totally.
You know? So it's just like ignorance is part of the process. Like ignorance of how not very good you are is part of the process.
though.
Because confidence matters. I mean, and it's true in comedy, it's true in life, right? Confidence is like 85% of being successful. You know what I mean? It's so weird. It's so weird, but confident people, even if you know they're full of shit, they're still attractive.
Right, because
You know
they're
what I mean?
selling it. Yeah.
Right. It's just like, all right, man, I'll mortgage my house to buy that RV from you at 38%. You seem like you sound really confident that's a good idea. I'm going to do that.
It's true. It's called good sales for sure. So definitely doing that now in my new job. What I'll ask you to, I know this is probably, again, kind of a cliche question, but if you had, speaking of growth, we always kind of ask comedians and different entertainers that come on here, if you had one piece of advice, which you've been great about giving a bunch, which is awesome. But if there's like one piece of advice that you could pass on to people who either are in comedy or are interested in doing it, what would that be?
I mean, there's no like tricks or secrets to it. It's just a matter of doing it a lot.
Yeah.
You know, like we all want to be big stars and we all want to be famous and everything, but it's like at the end of the day, you've got to practice your violin.
Yeah.
If you want to be a good violin player. And like you got to put in thousands of hours of practice and still no one's going to care. Mm-hmm. You know? And like you got to come to grips with that reality. And if you're still like, I still want to master the violin, then do it. You know? And then practically speaking, like open micers, just like certain things that they do. Like I hate when people talk about like, don't talk about poop or bodily fluids. Like it's, you know,
It's so true though.
it's like that's never gonna be like. Why would you write on that? No one, the audience goes, ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Right.
Make them make any sound except ugh. You know.
Right.
So
though.
like, just don't write about that. And then like don't like open micers get too dark. They'll talk about killing themselves too much.
Yeah.
And it weirds the audience out, you know? It's like a lot of comics go and be like, so I was thinking about killing myself. And it's like, hey, buddy, that's not what we're here to do. You know what I mean? Like, tell your therapist about that. We need you to tell jokes, you know?
Yes.
And then I have a list written down somewhere of like stuff that open micers do that pisses me off.
I'm sure there's I've talked about this too, where I remember one of the first nights I was ever at the Funny Bone, I went after two people who I haven't seen since, and I think it was actually Andy Hamilton that was hosting. Andy's just making a bunch of appearances on this episode, but the one guy before me talked about his broken penis.
Yeah.
Which, like, I don't know, maybe it could have been funny, but it was just done super awkwardly. And again, it's an open mic, and then all he did was, and this is another thing too, he was just like, my broken penis. And he goes, also, all my friends are over here. Like, if your whole set is just about you addressing your friends, like, that's great that they showed up. But at the same time, it's not a set. But there was that. And then there was another guy that was saying, he was like, first of all, when you're having sex, like, don't tell me how to do it or something. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, so I had to go after them. And I remember somehow, I wish I remembered my big opener, but I just remember I kind of, in the moment, I knew, it's just like how we talked about, address it. Because it was so silent, the first few people before me, I was like, all right, I'm going to have to just like open this up with the 10 people that were there that evening. And so when you did, it was fine. But yeah, if your friends
don't be afraid to make fun of those two guys either.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't want to be made fun of, don't bomb. You know what I mean?
And that's what I did. I made, as nice as I am, I made fun of them, and it smoothed over. And then one of them actually came up to me, not that I'm doing like a public service to anybody, but he was like, hey, thank you for mentioning that. That probably was like a little too much. And I probably won't do it again after that. And I was like, listen, I'm new to the game too. So, but that's what's kind of the beauty about comedy is we do as comedians. That's kind of a way of sharing love as well, is like making fun of other people.
There's nothing worse though than like, that was the other thing too, is being too dirty. Like when someone goes up at an open mic or a show and they're bombing, it's fine. They're bombing. The audience is just like, oh, this isn't funny. And they start to get bored. But when the comic is bombing and it's filthy, it makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's weird.
Yeah.
Because
That's
now
what
there's
happened.
just a guy on stage saying weird, inappropriate, sexual shit.
That's what happened.
And the
to
audience
me.
gets weirded out, and it can stink up the whole show. And that's other piece of advice for new comics is like, don't lean too hard on the dirty. Because when you bomb, you're going to bomb hard.
Yeah.
And they're going to hate you.
Yeah.
And the comics who come on the show after you are going to hate you. So like, bomb with clean stuff. And
Yeah.
then at least, you don't stink up the whole show and make people feel like they've been violated somehow.
Just give the room a good vibe. That's all we ask.
Don't be maybe if you're a creepo, just don't do that anymore. Don't be a creepo. And don't write about it and talk about it publicly, or everyone's going to know you're a creepo.
This is actually like pretty legitimate advice. So I hope that people rewind the clip, rewatch it again, and that way. But
So many like creepos reveal themselves at open mics.
I
right?
know.
Like one of the things I love about open mics, I sort of have a love-hate relationship with. I mean, it sucks watching people be bad at comedy, but when they're awesomely bad, when like it's a spectacle how bad they are. Part of me loves that more than I love anything else. Like, it's the uncomfortableness of the room. Like, you get to see this person, like, sort of have a psychological meltdown behind their eyeballs and try and play it off like they're not. It's really something. You don't see it anywhere else. It doesn't occur anywhere else other than a comedy open mic.
Yeah.
It's really something to see.
It's just because
I'm
it's
addicted to it. I like it almost as much as I like seeing well-crafted comedy.
No, I have some friends too, and they'll be like, do you remember this person that did this and then this person? And I'm like, but what about like the guy that was super good that was just up there? And they're like, oh, well, like he was fine too. But like that guy, I mean, let me tell you what.
The audience is like, remember that guy that came out with the apparatus on his forehead? They'll never forget that guy.
Oh, I'll never forget him because he wanted to be on the podcast. So that's another story for another time.
So
but,
is when you run a podcast, is it like running a comedy show where people are just hitting you up to be on it?
oh, all the time. So here's the thing, like you saw, I shared that post and I shared the post too, just to be like, hey, like, come on, like, come talk to me. Like anybody that is a great person and is, giving back to their community and contributing to their artistic or entertainment scene, I'm always open to it. But yeah, you'll have people on occasion who it's your podcast, but they want to run the show. So they're like, have you seen me on a podcast? Because this is how I'm going to talk. And I'm like, okay, cool. So you're never being scheduled.
It's right. It's like if you have to reach out to people and ask to be on their podcast, it's probably a bad sign. You know what I mean? Like the people you want to have on, you're going to ask them to be on, and they're going to be like, well, maybe I can do it if I'm busy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I'm hitting you up, that's a bad sign.
Yeah. Oh,
And so,
I agree.
I mean, I have good comics hit me up to be on my show, but I have a lot of people hit me up, and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like
Write
that's like
one decent minute first, then we'll talk.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's the other thing is that, I don't mind when people email because they're like, oh, I run a company. And I'm like, oh, perfect. And they send me a website, Twitter, Instagram. And that's so great. Like have a website, like even if it's just a simple WordPress, as long as I have somewhere that I can just click, that's all I really need. But when you start like, and I hate to be like, you can tell when somebody doesn't have their shit together. And, you know how I am. I do feel bad being like, oh, and maybe that's like a side of me because Jimmy's always like, oh, Molly, like you're always like.
You got to develop the killer inside, Molly.
Oh, yeah, I do. Well, it's there. That's what I told Chris the other day. I was like, it's there, but I think I save it for, I guess when like it really, like if you ever see me angry, you'll know that like some shit just really hit down.
I feel you though. It's hard to tell people.
Yeah.
No, you don't want to be bad, make people feel bad.
Right.
But you got to tell people no.
Develop the killer inside. I like that. Hashtag develop the killer inside.
You have to.
It's going to go for stage, podcast bookings, and I don't know, possibly making
Ruthless.
bread. Right.
You need a ruthless, severe person inside. You have to.
I'm ready. I'm ready to be ruthless. Speaking of ruthless, before we head out, so I asked Will to give me some kind of like facts about him. And if you follow us, remember to casually follow and subscribe to Casually Molly. And we are available on Facebook, Instagram, audio, YouTube, you name it, you're probably going to find us. But one of the facts that you gave me was that you appreciate the smell of old basements.
I love it.
Really?
Think about what an old musty basement. People say musty. That's I love that smell.
That's a fancy term, musty.
I love that smell. like not like there's mold growing down there, but just like a basement. That's a
Gotcha.
great smell. I love it.
I feel okay. So this is like, here I am being like, oh, a musty basement. But I think that's kind of how I feel about attics. Like yeah. So like you're at like the bottom of the house and I'm like, ooh, I wonder, because where I grew up, we had an attic and I remember like climbing up there and my mom's like, just be careful. Like
It smells like
History.
insulation and,
Yeah.
and like it's so hot though. The problem with attics is they're 100 million degrees. I guess
But we stored some stuff up there, so I think it was more for like, oh, I wonder.
Oh yeah.
I would find old pictures of my mom and my dad, or
I'm hit. I would do that. My mom would hide all that stuff up there. I would go through there and dig through all that stuff. I don't know why I like the smell of basements. I guess same thing. Like you could dig around down there and find weird stuff. My grandpa had one of those old houses. I mean, any house older than 100 years old has got the stacked up stones for a foundation. Those smell the best.
Yes.
And he had like tool benches down there and like old cigar boxes full of tools and just like, I don't know, that brings back that smell.
Like that nostalgia. Exactly. Because I had, oh my God, it's so funny. We had like tools and whatnot. And then, I don't know, it's just like an interesting, you remember the cigars. That was the thing. My dad was a big cigar smoker before he got older and, things happened. But that's interesting. Every time I smell a cigar, I totally think of like the attic or the house. I just think of my dad.
I like the smell of cigarettes sometimes, just because it makes me think of my dad.
Yeah.
Like I don't like being in a smoky room or something.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
I
same.
hate indoor smoking. It's like, I did a show down in Farmington and walked in and it was like, oh yeah, indoor smoking.
Yeah.
I forgot. But sometimes when I smell a cigarette off in the distance, it just makes me think of my dad. I'm like, I like that smell.
Yeah.
I like cigarettes 50 yards away.
50 yards away. I agree. So I forgot about indoor smoking. It's been such a thing for so long.
Every once in a while, I'll
it.
do a rural show, and I'm like, oh yeah, every single person in this bar is smoking.
Yeah.
And it's like you get smoke on your clothes like in a way that you don't anymore. Like it's different if you hang out outside in the smoke pit, you get a little bit of smoke and oh, my hair smells a little bit like smoke. You forgot what indoor smoking is like. Like it's intense.
It definitely is for
it's
sure.
It's awful. And it takes me like 3 days of showering before like I stop smelling smoke.
Yeah.
Like one shower, one shampoo doesn't do it.
No,
it takes 3 or 4 cycles to wash it out. It's nasty.
Exactly. When I used to work at the hotel, I had that. They were like you could tell the generational gap because it would be like, do you have non-smoking and smoking rooms? And I was like, hold on. And I was like, I just remember being at this place called the Red Squirrel, which was like this big, like just kind of like one of those old school diner-esque, like with the booths and everything. And there was the non-smoking side and then there was the smoking. And like sometimes my parents didn't smoke, but sometimes like if there was an availability in the non-smoking, we would just sit in the smoking. But it was crazy how you were separated like that.
Yeah, every place, like even Hardee's and McDonald's have the smoking and the non-smoking section. And they would be divided by like a half wall.
Yeah. Just a half wall.
Just a half wall. And you just had to smell everyone's smoke no matter where you sat.
So it didn't even make a difference. Like you're
crazy.
like, oh, because I remember we were, again, at the Red Squirrel. You had a table here and then the person who was smoking was right next to us. So it didn't really make a difference. So that's a little history lesson. There used to be, for
People
those of you
listening who are like 28 and under, like have no idea what we're talking about.
Oh, God, no.
Some early memories,
Yep. That is, oh my gosh. I can't, I completely remember that. But that's where we're at. So Will O'Donnell, basement kind of guy. I'm an attic kind of girl. We're old enough to know what non-smoking and smoking would be in an establishment. And for any open micers, you've got some great advice from Will.
Don't write about poop.
Just don't write about poop. That's all we ask. But Will, it was a pleasure, obviously, chatting with you. Where's a good place? Like, do you have any social media or anything we can find you on?
Yeah, I guess so. You can find me on Facebook at Will O'Donnell. I think I'm going to change it to Will O'Donnell Comedy or something.
Yeah.
So people can find me. Because there's like 10 million Will O'Donnells. But on Instagram, I'm Willie Thrilly Comedy.
He is.
And,
Willie Thrilly.
I mean, I just came up with that because it's silly.
Yeah.
And I thought, actually, it's sort of like people will remember that. I could say that at the end of a show. Willie Thrilly Comedy. And they'd be like, oh, what's that guy's name? Oh, yeah, Willie Thrilly.
Yeah, I like that.
So look me up at Willie Thrilly. And I'm on Twitter, but it's like a fake account. And I don't want anyone to know who I am, but I'm awesome on there.
Sounds good.
It's my
to me.
best platform, but you can't find me.
It's all right.
So sorry. Willie Thrilly Comedy on Instagram.
Well, it's all right. So look up the IG for sure. Just don't slide in his DMs unless it's, I guess, super important. But Will, what are you going to casually do now?
I guess I'm going to go home and get ready for the open mic tomorrow at Backdoor Comedy and Events.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every Thursday at Backdoor Comedy in O'Fallon, they do have an open mic that's $5. So make sure that you go and check that out for sure. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I will be featuring for Rena Com, headliner at the end of the month. And Andy Hamilton, who had 50 different shout outs during this episode, he will be hosting. But Will, I appreciate you again coming to sit down with me. And
It's my pleasure.
thanks for
It's a good
chatting.
time.
Oh,
Thanks for having me
thanks.
on.
Yeah, of course. And again, every Sunday we release an episode. So thank you.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.